Hi all, here is an introduction to the famous Indo-Anglian writer R.K.Narayan. His full name is Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayanaswamy. R.K.Narayan was born at Rasipuram in South India in 1906. His father Krishnaswamy had settled in Mysore, though his mother tongue was Tamil. Narayan had his education entirely in South India, and his thoughts and feelings are all of India. Choosing journalism as his career, he wrote for newspapers and journals. In the 50s, he crossed the Indian shores for America, but he has received no inspiration or training abroad. He has never returned to achieve fame, nor has his aim been to interpret India to the West as Ramanujan did. He viewed and recorded Indian life artistically. In 1935, Narayan published his first novel Swami and Friends. The now famous Malgudi appeared first in this novel. Two other novels, Bachelor of Arts 1936 and The Dark Room 1938, followed. During the war that followed, Narayan edited the Indian Thought and occasionally wrote for the newspapers. At the end of the war in 1945, The English Teacher, another novel, was published. It was followed by Mr. Sampath 1949, The Financial Expert 1952, and Waiting for the Mahatma 1955. The Guide, which appeared in 1958, was the consequence of an American tour organized by the Rockefeller Foundation. Besides My Dateless Diary, published in 1950, Narayan collected 2 volumes of his short stories under the titles An Astrologer's Day and Lovely Road. The Man-Eater of Malgudi, successful from the point of view of characterization, appeared in 1962. Another novel called The Vendor of Sweets was published in 1967, and The Painter of Signs, his 11th novel, came out in 1976. In his domestic life, he fell in love with a beautiful girl called Rajam, whom he married in 1935. But his married life was short, for she died of typhoid in 1939. Narayan won Sahitya Akademi Award for The Guide in 1960, and 4 years later he was awarded Padma Bhushan. Among the English novelists, Thomas Hardy is very distinctly remembered because his novels are rooted in a particular region called Wessex. Thus he earned the title of a regional novelist. R.K. Narayan also wrote his novels by fixing his stories in a particular place called Malgudi, which is situated on the border of the states of Mysore and Madras. But we must remember that Narayan is not a pessimist like Hardy. The comparison is just limited to the fact that they are both regional novelists. Though it is very easy to discern this quality of Narayan as a regional novelist, scholars have not been able to locate the precise area of his genius. R.K. Narayan is a comedian writer, but we have to understand that he tries to depict a balanced view of human sufferings without being carried away by sentiments. He seems to be telling his readers that through the vast panorama of social life he depicts in his novels, or through the vicissitudes of human actions and interactions in his stories, he can make them realize how absurd it is to take everything in life serious. By confining himself to Malgudi, Narayan is able to gain mastery over all the situations and characters in his story. He knows every street of Malgudi. He seems to have studied all its inhabitants thoroughly. So the readers do not feel that the story is an invention coming from the imagination of the author, but a realistic portrayal of the people he has known. And the variety of the people in his novels are so immense and the situations so numerous that the novelist is able to carry his readers with him and give them a feeling of having seen the whole universe in Malgudi. Malgudi expands itself in Narayan's novels into the very universe itself in which the readers discover a wide variety of human experience. Malgudi's kinship with humanity, or the very universal nature of the crisis in Malgudian soul, makes R.K.Narayan a great novelist. Narayan wrote several novels. Each one of them depicts a particular aspect of human aspiration or predicament. Swami and Friends is his earliest novel. As the title suggests, Swami is at the center and he is influenced by his friends. This seems to be the recurring pattern of Narayan's novels, and this also is surely a weakness as a writer. The readers can easily detect a particular pattern recurring in all of his stories. From an average state of life, his protagonist moves to an extraordinary state and is again brought back to the average state, but of course with all the experience of the journey. This recurring pattern in novel after novel makes R.K. Narayan a moralizer. Basically, his novels revolve on characters. The story heavily depends on characters. But through the interactions of his characters, Narayan brings out an objective view of life. This helps the readers to perceive the enormous nature of the complexity of life. He picks out certain attitudes and weaves his story around those human attitudes. He does not pinpoint the right and the wrong. There is a calculated and intentional detachment in the author. He simply narrates the experience, and the experiences narrated through human interactions get themselves balanced into a comic absurdity. Narayan seems to be reminding us that a neutral perspective of the world can relieve us of the weight of excessive attachments, leading to one or other type of misery. So, R.K. Narayan's story is important because the character is interesting, be it his Magaya or Srinivas or Raju. In the guide, the reader's keen curiosity is in Raju. This novel is interesting for us because the character, the guide, is interesting. The experience of the protagonist is always narrated in a simple and lucid language for which Narayan has a special gift. He has a technique of mixing past and present with which he is able to exhibit a kind of multiple states of consciousness in his characters. R.K. Narayan's outlook is primarily comic. It is comic in a broad philosophic sense, which enables him to weave all the bizarre events into a beautiful vision of life, in which every small event, every small acquaintance, however insignificant and absurd it might seem, turns out to have a meaningful role in the eternal scheme of things. Narayan's vision is shaped by a strong Indian sensibility that precludes any possibility of tragedy, because man here is safely placed in a cosmic hierarchy with relations extending not only to his fellow men but also to nature and God, not only in time and space but also beyond time and space. In the scheme of things, man is responsible to God as much as God is responsible to man. In hours of human helplessness, God's grace comes to help. One of the big three of the Indo-Anglian fiction, the other two being Mulkraj Anand and Raja Rao, he has made a significant contribution to the development of the Indo-Anglian novel. Anand is a politically committed writer who takes deep interest in the problems of the oppressed and the downtrodden. Raja Rao is better known as the creator of the metaphysical novel, with his metaphysical vision and symbolic intensity. He occupies a distinguished place in the field of fiction. Among the three, Narayan seems to be the least complex but most consistent in the growth of his art. He employs his comic sensibility, meticulously controlled by irony and artistic detachment. He uses the comic mode for depicting the little ironies of life in a fascinating manner. Narayan came to writing from journalism. Hence, the journalistic training is evident in the confident ease of his English style and his acute observation of life in India. His easy acceptance of using English in his creative writing has brought him sufficient fame. Glorifying the adaptability of the English language, he said to Graham Greene in a BBC interview, "I was never aware that I was using a different foreign language when I wrote in English, because it came to me very easily. I can't explain how English is a very adaptable language, and it is so transparent it can take on the tint of any country." Narayan uses a Bharat brand of English, which suits the prevailing Indian conditions. He holds the view that English had for a long time a confined existence in India, mainly in the halls of learning, justice, or administration, and now the time is right for it to come to the dusty street, marketplace, and under the banyan tree. Thus, it is clear that he has resorted to an unaffected simple language in his works. He seems to be in full agreement with Raja Rao, who holds the point that one should not write like the English or Americans. His style becomes impressive when fused with humor, but at times it becomes monotonous and tiring also. Narayan has made his edifice of fiction with great care and industry. He is probably the most entertaining and distinguished of the novelists that our country has produced. It has already been pointed out that Narayan came to novel writing from journalism. Consequently, the impact of the journalist may be discerned in his early experiments. His ironic dimension is an integral part of his comic vision. He explores the tremendous possibilities of the comic in the commonplace world of Malgudi. He is essentially a comic ironist who has taken a keen interest in Indian life in and around Malgudi. His humorous portrayal of outer and inner conflicts of man with touches of pathos and irony demonstrates his insight into the human reality. It shows his love for values in life too. His novels may appear to be regional at the outset, but they transcend their limit and acquire universality. They provide fascinating studies of human drama and the little ironies of our daily life. The fictional world develops a universal hue and it embraces the heart of humanity. Thank you.